2025. 2025, people. Where the hell did this... Hello everybody, it's I, Flamingo, right here, back again for another video. Well, we're finally here. The home stretch of 2025. I say that this would be the last video, but like I said, I really don't know if I'm going to be doing a live stream after Christmas, but we'll have to see when the time comes. But as for now, let's talk about 2025. I'm going to be really honest with you guys. 2025 was an interesting year. Like, I wouldn't call it a bad year per se for me, but I wouldn't also call it a good year. In some ways, I'd say it was just somewhere in the middle. Like, I had my good times, but I also had my bad times, if there's anything to judge by. But in a lot of ways, I feel like 2025 was also a year where my growth on my channel was a lot more than I've expected, especially when it comes to this here channel. But first, let's talk about last year. If you recall from last year, I did a video on a channel update about 2024, about what I all did on my channel, and what's also more on what's going to happen in 2025. But ever since that video, I started noticing that not a lot of people saw it, and what's more, they just said the same usual comments, like say, oh, it's a good video, Flamingo, or something like that, like say, I understand. But personally, I think you guys can say more than just that when it comes right down to it. But in spite of what I think about 2024 from last year, when it was a roller coaster, I decided instead of doing, say, what I did all on my channel by just saying each and every topic, I decided to go over it by months. That way it will be a lot easier and you can just find the timestamp of anything. Now, I did make cards and I hope they actually do appear on the screen when I do have them. So I guess that's how it's fitting. But when I say that this is on my channel, that's really what it means. I'm not here to talk about anyone else's channel unless they're relevant to the subject, and what's more, I'm only here to tell you what I personally think. I can't speak for anybody, and if you know my channel for a long time, then you know how my saying goes. I'm not anyone's narrator, and I'm not here to tell you your story. I'm only here to tell my own. So without further ado, let's get into channel recap of 2025. So without further ado, let's get started. Chapter 1, January. So starting off this video, we might as well talk about January, and what better way to start off January by saying that I don't know what to expect from a new year. And that's how I am in general, if I'm being honest with you guys. Whenever January comes around, I'm just here saying, yep, it's a new year, and thinking what's gonna happen. And to be honest, January in of itself, I didn't really upload that much, and now did I? Now to be fair, I did do one video, but that was only for a pretty cure video, so let's talk about that. If you've been on my channel for a long time, then you're pretty much familiar with my Magical Girl podcast. But the reason why I did the Smile Precure video in January has to do with one thing. My friend Messia. If you've been following me for a long time, Messia could at least ring a bell to you. But if you're not familiar, Messia is one of my friends who was motivating me to do my own channel, and thus I decided to make a Magical Girl podcast because of the dedication towards her. So I decided to do a pretty cure hair season, considering that in this case, why the hell not? And it doesn't help the fact that I've never talked about anything Precure related before or after this year video, which is a shame because I still think Smile Precure, well, not only just my introduction to the whole franchise as a whole, but it was also due to the fact about how much it really meant to me and Messia when it comes to a franchise like this. I really need to get more into these if I'm still. But even with that said, however, one of the biggest gripes I had with the video, and you're going to hear me say this a few times, is that there were a lot of buffering issues. Way too many for me to point out. Now, if you've been on my channel for quite some time, you may have noticed that the audio you're hearing here is a lot better than the one last year. Though for some reason, some people managed to tolerate it. I could not, unfortunately. Yeah, despite the video doing so well, apparently, this is one case where I really never understood how do people put up with my old audio at the time, even if it was just for a bit. When I did that Smile Pretty Cure video, there were a few things that I didn't and to really mention in that video, or maybe I did, it just got cut out because this was when I had an old laptop at the time. And due to the fact that I was going to say that it's basically Lisa Frank mixed with Magical Girl when I was doing Smile Pretty Cure, I would have said that. But even in spite of all that, it somehow attracted more people to find my channel, which I'm really surprised that actually happened. I don't know how that has really got into some people, but I guess I could take whatever it does. That said, however, what really bothered me, at least personal level, when it comes to making that video, is also due to the fact about that I didn't do much of uploading at all that month. It's not that I didn't want to upload or anything, it's just at that time I was catching up on a few shows, which will be important later, and what's more, I was also, really going so far as to do a night shift at that time. So I really couldn't do much anyways. But regardless of what you think of January, I still personally think it was decent to start out with. But even if I don't really like how my Pretty Cure video turned out, I'm glad more people start noticing it. And what's more, up there with some of my other Magical Girl shows, it's gone to the point where my Magical Girl podcast may be getting someplace. But I'm not going to hold my breath with that anytime sooner. So, with January, I guess we could say I started off pretty decently, but as time goes on, that's only for at the beginning of what we're about to see. So, let's move on to Chapter 2, February. Now, just like January, February I didn't really upload much at all due to the fact that I didn't really know what I was going to be doing at the time. And what's more, this was during the time when I had a little more of an anxiety problem going with me. Not going to go into detail what happened, but what you need to know is that around that time, I was also trying to find my own footing as a YouTuber as time goes on. But let me ask you guys the question before we get any further. Does anyone even care about Valentine's Day videos? I say this because the only video I did get to do was on Valentine's Day, and that was me talking about an anime known as The Wallflower. And I'm gonna just say this right here and now. While I admit now I learned the hard way about Valentine's Day, in spite of how cringy it was for how much I was obsessed with that day, I also wanted to talk about The Wallflower because I thought at first no one talked about it. Turns out I was wrong. Some people have talked about it. It was just either in YouTube shorts or those old videos if you're someone like me who digs up for old content from back in the earlier YouTube days. But I'm not gonna lie, going back to the Wallflower video in itself still had the same issues as I had with the other video. Namely the buffering issues, nobody cared to watch it, and even more so than I've realized, no one seemed to even care about it because they thought it would be best just to say, oh, okay, it's really a series worth recommending. I'll check it out when I still can, even though you guys could say more than just that, you know? I swear, every time I go to the comment section, I always see the same comment saying, good video, Flamingo, I understand, Flamingo, and so on. You guys know you can say more to the conversation than that. But as for the Wallflower video, it's one of those videos where I personally felt like I needed to say what I wanted to, because, well, it's one of those anime that I did watch a little bit around April of 2022, and I didn't go back to it until 4 months later. This was due to a number of things, but if you already know my history with 2022, if I've been here for a while now, you already know my history around that time was not great due to a lot of issues with watching some stuff in here and there with a certain family member of mine. That being said, The Wallflower in itself is still an underrated anime, and you might be wondering, why did I take a look at that series? After all, there are plenty of other romance anime I could have taken a look at, like say Ouran. Well, here's the thing. Even if I did discuss about Ouran, I'm probably going to say the same thing a lot of people would have said, and while I do want to do a video on that series, I have to fully admit, The Wallflower of itself is basically one that's overshadowed by Ouran of itself. Don't believe me? Let me. See, in a lot of ways, I always hear a debate about which one is the better one from a lot of people, whether it's Ouran or whether it's the Wallflower or some other reverse harem you can get your paws on. But the thing is, I don't care which one is better as long as I'm really being entertained and occupied by watching something. But the reason why I say that it's been overshadowed is because if you know anything about shoujo's history with Ouran, then you probably already know the fact that that series in itself is pretty overrated, and they always seem to have a lot of memes spurting every now and then. As for the Wallflower, it's basically the less appreciated series. Not to say that it wasn't a good series by any means, it was just a series that came out maybe around the wrong time. And when I say that, I do mean it. For those who don't know what I'm talking about, the Wallflower in of itself, while the manga itself came out from 2000 and ending in 2015, and the anime came out from 2006 to 2007, Oran's manga came out in 2002 and to start it's running on for quite a long time, whereas the anime came out in April of 2006. So either a lot of people really thought Oran pops a lot more and the Wallflower didn't, or maybe there's just something there that I didn't seek out. But whether you like one or the other is up to you, but personally, I still enjoy both of them nonetheless. But if I ever do talk about another anime around Valentine's Day, I was thinking of doing a Magical Girl series with a bit of reverse harem into it. I'm not going to say what it is until that comes out, but in the meantime, I'm really sad that the Wallflower didn't turn out the way I wanted to when it came to the video. But other than that, it's time for March, where I uploaded a lot, right? Chapter 3, March. So the good news is that I actually uploaded more than I've realized, so at least there's that. The bad news is how much it really blew my own waste anyways. Well, it doesn't help the fact that I had my old laptop, around 3 out of the 4 videos, but let's go over each of them, shall we? So one of the videos that I did do was actually a live stream with my friends Maddie and Getatina. And before you ask, yes, they're both friends of mine as well, but I'm just going to say this right here and now. The first live stream was a hunk of shit. And it's gotten to the point where I personally did not like it. This was due to a number of reasons. One, because while I do admit I am glad that both Getatina and Maddie acquainted with each other, but it's also due to the fact about how much my microphone kept jacking up. Seriously, watching this video was a nightmare. I could not tell you how much my microphone was jacking up to the point where it felt like I had a microphone inside a goddamn cave. It's one thing that my technology was really acting up, but it's another when you realize that despite how well the video has handled, I still think it did alright for those who did enjoy it, but for me, I'm not going back to this video anytime soon. Although, admittedly, I am grateful that the two got acquainted with. Yeah, remember when I said that I had some shows to catch up on? Well, this is one of those times where I wanted to create a big, huge list for myself. In this case, the Jose anime list. But even then, this video did not do very well. A lot of people just said it's a good video and just say, you know, that other stuff. But to be as frank as I can, the reason why I did that Jose list is mostly because, well, a lot of people I've actually seen online that did talk about Jose anime only show bits of it due to copyright, and they don't even go into more in depth about what they like about it. Just only give it a chance to watch, and that's it. While I did enjoy making this list, it also doesn't help the fact that along the way, the buffering issues kept getting worse. And even more worse than that, I personally felt like this list was just a wasted opportunity, considering that not a lot of people saw it. I mean, granted, some of the stuff I had on here should have at least been cut down shorter, but even with that said, however, one video like this should have been at least 12 anime instead of 13. I only did 13 because originally I wanted to do 15, but considering that my editing is shit, and what's more, I had to abruptly edit out a lot with the Polar Bears Cafe, I couldn't really store much into what went onto it. Now, you could argue I could have done it in multi-parters, but even so, who's gonna care about watching it anyway? And I think it's only fitting to say, when I did that video, I'm just gonna come out and say it. The reason why I did that video necessarily has to do with the fact it was also International Women's Day. Now, let me get this out of the way while I still can. I do not celebrate International Women's Day. I did not even know that was a thing until a few years ago, but okay. One thing's for sure, it's not that I find it a bad day or anything, it's just since it was the time to do something around Jose related, I thought, why not? But again, nobody cared to see the video, so I guess that checks out. But before I got a new laptop, I did get to do one last video before my old laptop went kablooey, and that was the Star Giant campaign video. And why? Okay, for those who don't know, I wanted to do this video for God knows how long, and yet I still managed to feel like this was still an insult to all passion projects. Not only that, I should have said something that I should have said long ago. It's not just an insult to all passion projects, it's also a giant bunch of middle fingers into a passion project that would fail so hard anyways. One thing you need to know about Star Giant is not just the fact of how stupid they are, but it's also the fact about how much they feel like this project, in a lot of ways, is going to fail any time you look at it. Regardless of what you think of passion projects, even though I love creativity to a T, this is by far the worst project I've seen since something that someone tried to make out of themselves anyways. And to make matters even worse, despite what they might tell you, this is one case where even Star Giant doesn't even know how to run a campaign. I already said what I needed to say in the said video, but even if this was a giant middle finger to all passion projects, I myself feel pretty bad for anyone who's done projects in of itself. It doesn't even help my case any further when you realize that in spite of what you may think of YouTubers, like whether there's artists out there, video gamers and such, I think they're a lot more passionate than they are. Hell, one of my friends, is actually an artist, and he puts a lot of faith into it. And speaking of which, I think it's only appropriate to say that of all the videos I've done in March, even though this is the third one, there's going to be another one I'm going to talk about in a second, this one was by far my favorite out of it. Sure, there were some more buffering issues here and there, but before anything, at least it went on a note that I didn't expect myself to go out on with my old laptop. But even with that said, let's get this out of the way while we still... See, I know for a fact that some people are going to say to me that passion projects are really hard to get out there. And that's true. People like VivziePop have got their passion projects out there and the big stuff out there, and what's more, they can do so much with themselves. Stuff like Hasbin Hotel and the Amazing Digital Circus come to mind when it comes to something like a passion project, and I think they do very well for themselves. But I feel like even with that said, however, one thing that I don't hear a lot of people bring up when it comes to that campaign video, Star Giants, is that we all know the reason why they wanted to make something out of this passion project. It's so they can scam money from people so they can go to their stupid fucking conventions. And you cannot tell me otherwise. I told someone around this time when I was in my own personal server, and even I know for a fact if you're gonna scam people for money, it's not gonna make you look any better. In fact, it makes you unforgivable if anything else. Would any of you really scam money from people just to make a passion project really work that way? For your convenience, I hope you don't do so, because that's a fucking horrible excuse. Now I know what you're thinking, and yes, I do realize that there's also Patreons and also members only and stuff, but I highly doubt they would go even this far just to make something work. Hell, I show off my poems and my book covers on my live streams, and even so, I don't go so far as to scam people for money just to get $25,000. Why you need to make yourself look worse, Star Giant? I really hope you're proud of yourself. That being said, say what you want about Mr. Enter's Growing Around project, but at least, even if it was expensive, he still refunded the people in question. Even if Star Giant did say that's in later on, I personally don't believe that for how much they lie. Hey, Star Giant, you want to say that one lie equals 1,000 lies? I can't even keep track how many you've done. And that's not the only other time I did a video anyways. The other one was another live stream, but this one may be the most boring, if anything. Now, when I say boring, that's really the best way to describe it. I wouldn't call it the worst like the first live stream I had this year, but it is one that I wouldn't really recommend watching, if anything. For those who don't know, I do a thing called Flamingo's writing streams, where I basically just chill out and show my own writings and show what I can do. But the reason why I say this one was the most boring has to do with the fact that I was talking for a bit, and for some reason I was muted the entire time. I didn't even notice that until the live stream was already finished, but even with that said, however, again, no one bothered to stick around for it, and I think that's one of the reasons why. If you guys ever do watch my Flamingo's writings, which for some reason I keep doing 2 per year, seriously, I did 2 last year and 2 this year, I don't really think that's really saying that you should really go ahead and watch this one. If anything, it's really one of those videos where of all the videos I could count on, this one was probably the most boring. And I really can't stress enough. oh, I hear what you're saying. Videos and live streams are not the same thing. Well, to me, I just say same difference, so why the hell? So while I do admit that March was not really a bad month per se, it was definitely not a really great month for me. If anything, I was just somewhere in the middle or some combination of saying it was below average. So I guess that's the only way to describe it. So let's move on to the next month. Chapter 4, April. So we're only one quarter to the months and we're already into April already. Jeez. Anyways, one thing you need to know about April is that while I admit that I did do one live stream and two Magical Girl podcast videos, I think this one may be a little better, if only because my friends Gettatina and Maddie both hijacked my stream in my live stream, which I still find pretty hilarious. And I don't mean hijacked and say, oh, they want to crash my stream by just doing some hijack shit. No, this is just a way of slur by slang and saying things like, oh, we're just here to have fun and everything. If you guys want to take that another. Now, I will say, admittedly, these were a lot better by anything considered, but honestly, when you get right down to it, I really love how they hijacked my stream anyways. I mean, I watch their channel a lot just to support them and everything, but even with that said, having them do it on mine, which while Gettatina did do it on mine last year in September, this is one case where he actually did show off one half of it just to show what he's capable of, especially when he's playing Helldivers. I'm sorry, but I can't help but I loved how much I took some clips from my own video just to say I love how they bond. I wish I was a better editor, otherwise I would show a compilation of how they interacted with each other, but this is also where I started learning more about the Party Crashers, if anything. If you're not familiar with the Party Crashers, basically they're these four gamers who will basically say anything like catchphrases like, oh, I see, and some others along the way, like Wario Time, Wario Cake, and so on. I recommend watching the Party Crashers. They're fucking hilarious when you get right down to it. But as for the stream itself, I will say this one's a lot better because one half of it has Gettatina doing it. And there was another half where Maddie was doing his drawing from one of his comics. And while I can't really say too much other than that, I still want you guys to support their channels. Seriously, they deserve more love than you realize. Considering the fact how much they both have found me, and I find that pretty funny in some ways, I didn't expect them to find me with that regard. Yeah, one thing you need to know is that when I started my channel out, these two have started their channels way before me, even if Maddie didn't really start out fully until December of last year. My god, what is it with these months going so fast for me? Anyways, after that's when he started doing his channel with more live streams, his drawing and stuff. But Gettatina has been doing it a lot longer than both of us, so that's something, I guess. I should also mention that while I was doing this video, I forgot to mention in the March stream that while I did mention that I do my writing, I think it may have paid off for how much I really did my writing for those around me. For those who don't know, I do dedication poems, and I wasn't expecting my friends Gettatina and Maddie to really like them. I mean, sure, maybe it's because I was really less confident, and let's be honest, my low self-esteem is horrible, right to the point where it makes stage fright look braver by comparison. And when it comes right down to it, after doing those dedication poems, they do a lot, if anything. But to be as transparent as I can, I'm not even done with making any of these here poems. I'm still making more as time goes on. It's just too bad after a certain incident that happened to me on Instagram, but I'll get to that when we get to it. So let's talk about the other videos I've done. In this case, the Magical Girl podcast. As I alluded to in the Jose list, I wanted to catch up on some shows, but I also wanted to do follow-up videos as well. That being with my Magical Girl Ore video, which inside the fact that I did two of these on the same day, I wanted to get them out of the way while I still can. But anyways, the Magical Girl Ore video is one of those videos that I think could have been better written. Mostly because I was just mostly talking about how it's really one of the weirdest things I've seen. Seriously, you thought that Q High Earth Defense Club was weird with his Magical Girl parody with boys? This one has girls transforming into men. As I stated, it was basically like JoJo if it had Madoka Magica flavor, but Madoka Magica wasn't even a lighthearted show. Sure, it started off lighthearted, but it was more dark than usual, if anything to judge by. But as I stated, this is one of the weirdest ones I've ever covered, and it's really one of the more average series I've covered this far. I wouldn't say it's really the best, even though I do like it in a guilty pleasure kind of way. I wouldn't recommend it to everybody. But that was far from the only Magical Girl series I had on my channel for April. But that other one would have to be cosplayers. One of the most frustrating things I ever had to sit through, and what's worse, it's one of those series that has everything and nothing at the same time, as the Hero of Tomorrow would put it. As I said before, it's one of those series that came out way before High Garden Spice, and yet somehow it managed to do it almost just as much as High Garden Spice did. Doesn't give you much to work with the characters. The story itself is so inconsistent that it hurts, and even worse than that, it doesn't even do anything except just say they're cosplaying. Although, admittedly, I'm not so sure what they're cosplaying. Maybe it's something from obscure media. I wouldn't know, considering I don't think I've seen anything like this aside from maybe Koto's outfit, which reminds me of Miyu's if she had a lot longer extension with it. But I'm not going to go over that for publicity's sake. There's no way in hell. I already went through what I went through in both those videos. If you want to check them out, though, admittedly, I like the Magical Girl Ore video, I think cosplayers could have been a little better written. But anyways, April of itself did have some problems along the way and behind the scenes, but it's mostly because of Instagram of itself. I made no secret that I personally don't like it when people get hurt, and when I was stepping up for someone when he was getting hurt because someone wouldn't stop harassing him, I immediately got to get in the bad mood, all because she thought I was being the bad guy for her making her stop harassing him every once in a while. So let me get this straight. You'd rather have the man get harassed instead, and rather than you for harassing him. If anything, it makes you the victim. If that doesn't spell stupidity, I don't know what does. But even with that said, I still think that April of itself was alright. I wouldn't call it the best month out there, but I did get to do the videos I got to do anyways. And, well, that leads into May, so let's talk about it. Chapter 5, May. Say, how would you like it if I said that May in of itself was pretty much, it felt like I was going up around the roller coaster without coming down. I thought at first it would be like that, but there were some drawbacks to it, and most of it has to do with what happened behind the scenes with me. See, during the time around late April and early May, somehow I discovered an earache. I don't know how that happened because I wasn't near anybody, and what's more, I was experiencing it a lot more than I've realized. It was so painful, in fact, that I really couldn't do much of anything, but I had to do something to take care of my family. It doesn't help the fact that this wasn't the first time I had an earache. The first time I had one was when I was 17 years old, and somehow I got it again 8 years later at. But even beyond that, just because I was going through an earache, and even if I am stubborn because I had to do whatever I could in real life, yeah, I still had to work around that time anyways when I was still in pain, but thankfully it wasn't as much pain. Seriously, you could not really stand me around, if anything, to judge by. If it was around, say, when I was sleeping, that earache itself was making me have a hard time sleeping, and I was just really crying most of the time. That's how painful it was. But anyways, what videos have I done in May? Well, I only did 2 videos, and around that time I figured I might as well do those to get out of the way. But one of them was talking about my favorite animated movie of all time, The Secret of NIMH. Admittedly, I pushed this off until I got to Mother's Day because, well, obviously I was still going through some kind of weird mild itch when it comes to my subscribers, and I was gonna make this into my 1K special, but I decided to make it into something that I've wanted to talk about for a long time. If you've been following me for a while, then it should be no secret that The Secret of NIMH is my favorite animated movie, considering how much I really loved this movie. It's not my favorite movie and say it's the only one I watch. It's my favorite essay. It really did help me out in one part of my life. I made it no secret that I still go through a lot of depression a lot, whether it's due to loneliness or something that goes on in my mind as is. And I'm still going through that, if you're gonna ask. But even with that said, The Secret of NIMH is one of those movies I'll still go back to again and again for not just nostalgia, but for me to perk up at times. Even if it did choke me up when starting to watch it around 13, it really gave me more than I've realized, especially for how much I really went over what made this movie so special. But during that time, I also did a chillaxing stream, and I was originally thinking that this would be the last one for some time this year, but this was far from the only live stream I had with my friends, and this was the 1K special, so let's just. Now, I know for a fact that some people would probably ask and say maybe this is my favorite live stream, despite it being a 1K and everything. But to tell you the truth, guys, this is not my favorite live stream. Yeah, funnily enough, this is not really my favorite live stream, even if it did have Maddie hijacking my stream with his drawing, which I do admire nonetheless. But even and with that said, the 1K stream was something, I guess you could say. But the reason why I'm saying it's not my favorite is mostly due to the fact that it's just not something that I would just go back to and say, I only watched this because I got the 1,000 subscriber votes wanted. Even if that was my goal, that wasn't really something that I wasn't just going to watch because I hit that number. But admittedly, I was also gonna say that there was someone else who was supposed to come up around this live stream, but unfortunately he didn't make it due to technical difficulties. Don't worry, dude. I fully understand that. Seriously, what is it with technical difficulties being a bitch to the most innocent people out there? This is really something, ain't it? But even in spite of what I did do in that live stream, I will say it did give me a lot to work with this, with having fun with my friends. And when it comes right down to it, I am grateful for how many people still watched it every now and then. I wouldn't call it my favorite out there, but it's definitely one I still admire nonetheless with my friends. I mean, hell, it's thanks to you guys and them that I wouldn't have made it this far, if anything. And yeah, let's move on to June and oh god. Chapter 6, June. And we follow up a month that turned out pretty well to something that went downhill. And I mean this in the most generous way possible, because if anything, this didn't only just happen, something bad happened to me in real life, but it also has to do with me, what happened on YouTube. So what happened? Well, for no other reason other than the fact that this here kid, yeah, I'm just gonna say kid because you look at the writing here and tell me if they act like an adult or anything like that. But then again, there are immature adults out there like Star Giants, so I guess we'll take whatever we can. Anyways, what you see in this screenshot right here is how much this lunatic goes so far as to say that it's my job and it's my responsibility to go so far as to check on the person when clearly they didn't even reach out to me to begin with. And even worse than that, this person goes so far as to do other stuff, selling rumors about me, telling people that I'm a bad person because I was busy taking care of my family. And worst of all, and there's two things that you need to know about. So pray for me once I say this. Hopefully YouTube doesn't do anything. But for some reason, I will say the first thing they called me was a bully, all because I was taking care of my family. Yeah, because it's not like you have a family or anything. If you have a family, that's being a bully if you take care of them. That's really shameful. How dare does Flamingo go so far as to take care of her family? That's a horrible thing to do. Do I even need to say anything else besides that's anyways? Because as far as I can tell, this is what I mean when I say that I'm not obligated to talk to everybody online. It didn't just happen behind the scenes and on YouTube, so far to the point where they basically had other people pinging me saying that Flamingo Writer didn't watch my video. Oh, Flamingo Writer is being a bully and I think she should commit suicide for that. You heard that right. They actually committed me to commit suicide all because I was going through something. And what's more, this was during a time when something happened off the scenes when I was going through something else in my family. Now, I'm gonna say this right here and now. If you guys have a problem with me taking care of my family, then either YouTube is your whole world and you don't know how to touch grass and eat it, or you're just really that upset that someone like me doesn't really get to do anything with their family that much in spite of all that, because I always have to take care of them. And what's more, it's not really my job to watch your videos anyways. As Maddie Abraham said before me, content creators care about their content. They just don't owe you that kind of attention. They don't owe you their time. They don't owe you their anything else. They just owe you the content they create. And even if you take that in, it goes even further than that when you realize that, in spite of what I said, they still ping me every once in a while just to do that. Yeah, Flamingo writer taking care of her family, and she had something awful happen to her behind the scenes. She should be locked up in jail for that and killed forever. Seriously, I could not tell you how much this doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But enough with the tangents. What did I do in June anyways? Well, not a lot, and I was gonna plan on doing other stuff, so let's talk about it. So the only video that I did do in June was the series Usagi Drop, except I did it a little different than most people have when they did this series in their own videos. So let's talk about why I did it. See, in case you guys don't know, once again, this is yet again another follow-up to the Jose list I've done in March. And even with that said, Usagi Drop is one of those videos that I wanted to do for a while, to talk about both the anime and as well as its manga. Now, if you know anything about Usagi Drop's history, then you already know that the manga is one of, if not the most controversial Jose manga out there. And if anything, it does show why it is. If you've seen the anime like I have, I did state it pretty clear that I watched this with my Nana, and I made it no secret that I still enjoy this here series. Despite it being lighthearted, it's also pretty nice to see what happens in a father's perspective, taking in a little girl who had nowhere else to go because her again and father, as well as her mother, are nowhere to be found. And yeah, no, well, except as we know that the father is really Takechi's grandfather, and that's really Rin's his father. And what's more, her mother doesn't want anything to do with her because her manga work is more important. But even beyond that, despite it being 11 episodes long, it does whatever it can to fill in that. Compare that to the anime is where things start really turning topsy-turvy. And I'm not shitting you. The text on screen here is really going so far as to say that it's almost incest. I get that both Daikachi and Rin are not blood related, but even so, having an older man take you in at 6 years old and then wait till you graduate from high school, go so far as to say getting married and then agreeing with it, it's actually grooming, if anything, to judge by. It also doesn't help the fact that when this came out, a lot of people were pissed off of the manga, and I was no exception. I was so pissed to the point where I was also creeped out by this. Hell, it's no wonder why so many people say that the manga doesn't exist for a reason, or better yet, you can just say you want to ignore the second half of it. Now, in spite of what I all said here, there were 2 videos I wanted to do, but if you know me by now, then you already know that summertime is not a great time for me to do videos. And I made no secret that I didn't really have that much to upload at all due to a lot of things like that. So let's go over what I would have done. One of the series I've wanted to talk about in June, although admittedly I started watching it around before or during the time on Father's Day when I was doing that Usagi Drop video premiere. Honestly, the video I had in question was also the video with Key the Metal Idol. I didn't talk about it because it was my first time watching it, first off, and second, it's also due to the fact I didn't really have that much to say on it for now. I am a sucker for sci-fi, but even I'll admit, despite watching Key the Metal Idol episode one and every day, I still think it's actually something that's pretty decent, all things considered. I mean, I would recommend watching, say, Kyoto's videos because he actually goes more into it than I could have. And what's more, he has a lot more to say about what goes into the series and what made it almost overlooked. And the other video I would have done in question was also the Pixar Animation Studios video because I wanted to talk about my thoughts on it, if anything. But I decided to scrap it because, well, despite Elio coming out during summertime, did anyone even care about watching other Pixar videos? I know that there are tons of videos out there that can get more in depth with Pixar, but for myself personally, I just wanted to give my thoughts about what do I think about Pixar as a whole, considering I was binging through a lot of Pixar movies at that time. And I'm not so sure if anyone wants me to give my thoughts on it. Maybe in the future, maybe I won't do it. We'll have to see how that goes. I'm not so sure what to expect, so get used to hearing me saying. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that despite what some people might say about Pixar, I still love the studio, even if they do have some misses every now and then, but that doesn't say that I can't really see all the great movies they have there. Seriously, one such user says that The Incredibles and Ratatouille is too adult. Which to that I say, either you don't know what too adult means or you just never cared about mature stories for all audiences. Seriously, I don't even know what that means when you watch something like that from Pixar, but okay. So let's move on to the Chapter 7, July. Once again, this is yet another month where I didn't really upload much at all due to the fact I was still healing in the process. But even with that said, I only did two kinds of videos, a YouTube short and a live stream about my 6-year anniversary on YouTube with my own account. Not to say that I didn't join YouTube when I was younger, this is just my account personally. But even with that said, I highly doubt anyone would care about it anyway, so let's talk about those videos in question. One of those videos in question was a YouTube short with my dog, Rocky, and honestly, I only did that video mostly because I was so bored and I wanted to get something out of the way. But I didn't want to do a full-length video, so I decided to do a YouTube short, and hey, it gained more attraction than I've realized, so that's something, I guess. But even in spite of all that, the other video I did was a YouTube live stream. Now this one is probably a little more better than, say, the one I did for March, especially because I was always doing was typing. But here's where I actually showed off on Wattpad what I all did on my live stream anyways, because I wanted to show off my writings. I mostly showed the poems and the book covers I have in store for myself, especially when I do something like my writings and everything. But by the time I'm making this, I'm still in the process of trying to get back to my writing. I just don't know when that'll show up, if anything, judged by. Regardless, a lot of people seem to enjoy my 6-year anniversary live stream, even if it could be a little better, or if anything. Not much to say other than that, but hey, at least I got to talk about what I wanted to, and even though, admittedly, I wanted to do more than just that. I mean, let's be honest here, July in itself wasn't as bad as June was for me personally, but it was definitely a month where I personally had too much on my mind as is. Not just from everyday stuff and everything, but it's also due to me going through a lot more of the pressure I've been hanging on to. And let's be honest, when you have pressure, it's hard to get something out of your system while still can. Oh, but that's trauma. Seriously, trauma is not fun to have, guys. If you went through trauma, you would know. But if you haven't, I do envy you. But just don't get cold-hearted about it. If anything, let's move on to August. I mean, August. My bad. These months are going so fast, I had a hard time keeping up. Oh. Chapter 8. August. Now, this is a month where not just me, but a lot of people had issues with August. And if you know the issues, well, you already know the issues. But let's go over the video I did do before that long live stream. In this case, where I talked about Cho's Band Together 2001. If you're someone like me who knows this guy, then you already know how distasteful this person is. Why do I say that? Well, it's mostly because if you've been around the circles like I have, then you already know how much a lot of cartoon reviewers love to give their opinions out. Now, I'll fully admit, I did say that there's a thing called unpopular opinions, like I said in the video. But looking back at that, I think I should have explained a little more about, say, about how people can be opinionated over times. I mean, granted, this is the internet, and everybody's going to be opinionated one way or another, but the thing is, Alex takes it to a whole new level. When I said that Alex goes so far as to he'll just disrespect anyone's opinion, I meant that. This guy just doesn't really respect anyone's opinions, and even worse than that, he'll just do anything to stomp on the ground, walk on eggshells because he feels like it, and so on and so forth. I already stated this in my video about what I felt about the guy, but the short version is up there with Star Giants, Lily Orchard, or CD Call, or say Magenta, or I guess you could say DS Station. Look, guys, I know that they change their usernames every now and then, but they're gonna be the same person, so I don't see a problem with that. If you're gonna just change your username and think for the better. Anyways, back to what I was saying. One thing I will say about Alex, on the other hand, is that he's never gonna change. Right up there with the set 3 I mentioned. When has he ever gonna change? I mean, yeah, I did hear that he did get contacted, as it was pointed out in my comment section. But even with that said, I highly doubt he's gonna learn his lesson easy way or the hard way. Or the middle ground way. Come on, you know I had to. But let's not waste any more time and talk about the most infamous thing that happened around August. You know it, I know it, everybody in the world knows it, the HAI verification thing. And I'm gonna be straight up honest. This is what really caused me to break down, as do a lot of other people. And it's not hard to see why. Once again, this is yet another live stream where I talked about the video along with my friend Getatina, and well, it does show how much I was paranoid along with a lot of other people, and by saying that, I don't mean that to be rude or anything, I mean that in the most blunt way as possible to at least say it. When it comes right down to it, Genesis and I have discussed about it in said video, and despite it being 4.5 hours long, I was still trying to find out what else to do with my last live stream, if anything was the case. Now, to be fair, it wasn't really my last final live stream per se, but even with that said, I had no idea if it was going to take effect or not. People say it's been canceled, others say it's still going on and such, but I'm not going to hold my breath underwater with this, because if I do, it's going to cause a lot of people to say it's still happening. Seriously, look what happened in Australia, and they still managed to make 16-year-olds get every access, meanwhile under 16 have gotten it. This is what I mean when I say that I'm not going to do anything like that. But if you want more in depth on it, I'd probably recommend Deep Humor. I mean, trust me, I know some people are going to say to me I'm one of the most idiotic people to recommend him, even if he does tend to exaggerate every now and then, but he does go more in depth with it than I could have, and what's more, he has a lot more to say about it than you think he does. Trust me, I know some people don't like that, but which are you going to take? Someone who gives you misinformation, or someone who's trying to tell you otherwise? With that video, I decided to go ahead and talk about what other videos I've done, but it wasn't until much later on I started doing them, and that was my Magical Girl podcast, so let's talk about that while it's leading on to September. One of those videos being Magical Girl Friendship Squad, and considering that I needed a cope from the whole AI verification, I decided to go ahead and just do that and do my Magical Girl podcast. Starting off with Magical Girl Friendship Squad, as I stated. Now, I will say I think this video, up there with the ones in April, could have been better written, especially because it was me trying to find ways to talk about this year's series. Even if Manga Comment has talked about this show before me, as do with some other people, I want to talk about it because as someone who's an expert in Magical Girl shows, I don't know who you're looking at, I don't really think it's a safe bet to say that I really feel like this here series in of itself really did give me something to say, but I felt like it could have been better. But it was the only one I could say that really did have potential for something that's made for adults, especially in the West, but as you can probably guess, that never came to be. But the other series I have done for the month would have to be Magical Girl Site, and oh boy, if you thought that Magical Girl Friendship Squad was rage bait, which I personally didn't find it rage bait, I just found it more like, say, it was more disappointing than raging. But this one made me want to rage quit after watching it. Where do I start? I guess I can start off by saying that this wasn't the only time I started watching it. I tried watching it a few years ago back in 2021, but even then I still struggled to watch it, mostly because of how edgy and trying to be as mature as possible could be. But that said, I did get to do the video, even if it felt a little rushed. Yeah, if you're wondering that beeping sound in the background, that's mostly because I got a notification earlier about with my job and everything, and what's more, I didn't really cut it out. Seriously, again, I'm not good with my editing, so I had to do whatever I could. But while August may not have been a great month for me or a lot of other people, I'm still going to say for me personally, especially because, like I said in the beginning of this video, I'm only going to talk about it for myself and I can't speak for everyone else. I think it's only fitting to say that I personally think that it could have been a lot better without this AI thing. Seriously, screw AI. Anyways, let's get on to Chapter 9, September. September in a lot of ways was just really a month of Magical Girl podcasts, but like I alluded to, I was still trying to cope and everything. Not to say September was as bad as August, but it was definitely something that could have been a little better if anything. But even with that said, I still think September in of itself did have its own missteps here and there, but nonetheless, I got to do my Magical Girl podcast, but it was mostly on shows that I had either to catch up on or ones that I was slacking off to watch. So let's talk about them. The first video I did for heard my Metro Girl podcast in September would have to be Nurse Angel Riddick at SOS. And I have to fully admit, I did state in that video it took me a long time to watch that show. And I'm being dead serious when I say that. Despite nothing else, though, this is one of those cases where I started watching the show around say October 2022, and I didn't get back to it until months later, and then months later, and then months later. But I didn't get to finish it until this year of September of 2025. And yeah, this is what I mean when I say I'm a slow binger these days, and I do apologize for that. Seriously, it's not easy when you grow up and have a lot of stuff to do and you want to do something else. But hey, I got to talk about the show, and I think I did it all right. Not the best, but something that's decent enough. But after that, I talked about another obscure anime that came from the 90s when it comes to Metro Girl, in this case, Correct Yui. I said before that this seems like it came before its time and maybe after its time, if anything to judge by. But even with that said, I still managed to enjoy it. It doesn't really help the fact that, unlike Nurse Angel Riddick SOS, while it didn't take me as long, I started watching this here series around March of 2024, and I didn't get back to it until this year of 2025. It's really a pain when you realize that despite how many times you try watching a show, it's always going to affect your viewing if it wasn't obvious. This wouldn't be the first time anyways, and nor will it be the last. But even with that said, I still then I did a series called Kami-chama Karen, which, admittedly, I think I was a little too hard on the series, if anything, if you want to call my viewings a little too hard at times. That said, however, it really does pain me to see that, despite the series being okay in a lot of ways for my view's sake, I think it was still good enough to give it a watch. I didn't really know about the series until 2021, and I still didn't have an easy time watching it, if it's anything to judge by. I will say, in spite of that, one thing that really does bother me about this here series is how much they really wanted the second season, and we never really gotten that. Seriously, this here show is really one of those cases where you could say it came out before and after its time, like I said for Corrector Yui, but even beyond that, I still don't think it could have been better if we did have more than that. But after that video, I also finally got the time to watch a show that somehow didn't take me that long despite having 51 episodes, Wedding Peach. And like I said in that video, this is one case where some people still have an issue with this here series because they say it's a Sailor Moon ripoff. Guys, I understand that Sailor Moon came out in the 90s, but just because it came out during that time where they finally redefined the magical girl genre does not mean that every magical girl show is ripping it off. And even more so, there's about to be more magical girl shows that came out prior from that. Hopefully next year I will get into those if I have the chance. We'll have to see. Even with that said, however, I did state that if you're gonna say that Wedding Peach is a ripoff of Sailor Moon, well then I'm gonna say that Spider-Man is a ripoff of Superman. Yeah, I thought so. You guys are going to say that's pretty stupid. Yeah, well, it's stupid to say that one series is really a Sailor Moon ripoff, if anything. I already stated what I had to say in the video, but one thing that bothered me from this would have to be the point where somehow one part got muted. I don't know how that happened, but if anything, a lot of people still enjoyed it, so there's that, I guess. But we're still not done yet. We're going into October, so let's see what scared us this. Chapter 10. October. You know, I'm starting to notice that October is pretty much a month where I do a lot of videos. Not just this year, but last year as well, when I was still starting to find my own footing as a YouTuber. But even with that said, I feel like, October had plenty of videos to speak of. For example, the first video I ever did was the video where I did my childhood nightmares list. Admittedly, I wanted to do this video mostly because since when I was 15, I was already getting fascinated by a lot of YouTubers, and considering I was inspired by The Hero of Tomorrow and a little bit of Mr. Enter, that's what made me want to do the childhood nightmares anyways. Even in spite of all that, there was one video, well, in this case, one clip that I didn't get to talk about in the series that I never got to talk about. See, I don't know if you guys read the comments like I do, but one person who is a friend of mine actually said that one that really freaked out was the episode from Pokemon known as Abra and the Cyberkick Showdown. Fun fact, I was originally going to put that in this video, but I decided against it because I didn't want to stretch out the video too long as it is. I mean, sure, it's not as long as the Jose list, but let's hope that this video doesn't drag on too long for my audience either. Even with that said, however, I did manage to get to talk about some of the stuff that did scare me as a kid, even though some of the editing did get cut out at times. I really hate my editing style. But even with that said, I got to talk about this here, and whenever I think of Abra and the Psychic Showdown, now that I think about it, did anyone ever think of Stephen King's novel Doctor Sleep? Yeah, I thought so. But after that video, I started doing another series I've always wanted to cover, in this case, Holic. I'd like to think that the Hero of Tomorrow would have covered this if I did give him Patreon money, but like I said, I'm not really good with money, and I would recommend someone like Animat to focus on that series, but after Atlas Through the Looking Glass, yeah, no, I stand by what I said. I'm not gonna recommend him after what happened in that video. Seriously, I know that video was old, but still. Anyways, Holic itself gave me a lot to work with, and even with that said, however, I managed to talk about whatever I could have. Despite nothing of the else, though, I will say that this is one case where this may be one of, if not my favorite Clamp series out there. More than I can say about Magic Knight Ray Earth and Cardcaptor Sakura. Not to say those were bad necessarily, it's just when my intro to Clamp came into my library, this is what got me hooked into their stuff. And I would have talked about Tokyo Babylon, but like I said in that video, I didn't really have that much to say on the map. And as for the next series, I talked about Vampire Princess Meet You. Now, admittedly, like I said in that video, I did state that I wanted to talk about Pupa, but considering I didn't really have the strong stomach for it, that's why I talked about Vampire Princess Meet You. I mean, seriously, this series is like a buried gem, even if some people may have a problem with it because it's episodic. Like I stated in one of my videos before, there are going to be times where you can find out if you want to go into episodic shows, or if you're into something that's more into the story gimmick. And even with that said, however, I still enjoyed it, even if this was my first time viewing it. I still watch it and on occasion if I'm into something spooky, even if it's not October anymore. But come on, you can watch whatever feels comfortable for you. Don't let anyone tell you a difference. But since my birthday was around the corner that time, I decided to do a birthday live stream for that occasion. Yeah, unlike the last time I did a birthday video, which was last year when I talked about Patalero, an obscure shoujo anime that's still going on to this day. Yeah, even when writing that video, I still can't believe it's still going on to this day. But this time I got to finally do a birthday live stream where it's just me celebrating with you guys. I mean, sure, maybe it's because I'm a little selfish or something, but I really wanted to celebrate with you guys because that's the only way I could do it. Doesn't help that I didn't get my magic wand. Anyways, after that, and I can say that the video itself, or the live stream, whatever you want to call it, I really don't care at this point. Anyways, I will say the live stream, I will admit, you think that this would be my favorite live stream, like the 1K video? Whatever gave you that idea? No, I'm being serious. This is not my favorite live stream up there. And that's wait until later. Not soon later, but you know what I mean. Anyways, after that, I get to state that this was pretty fun to do, especially during the time when I finally wanted to have fun for myself, and at least until I got a phone call, which, yeah, I'm not gonna say too much, but that was really from a sibling who wanted to wish me a happy birthday, so at least there's that. But soon when that video was done, I got immediately gotten into talking about a show that was really a staple to my high school years, and as well as a writer, would have to be As Told by Ginger. This was one show that, even if I couldn't show clips because Viacom are overprotective people, I decided to talk about As Told by Ginger, even if I have to show pictures every time I did that. I will say, despite it being 25 years old, my god, I feel bad for being older than this show. But anyways, after talking about this show, I really gotta say, it's really perked me up as a writer. And this won't be the only show I'll talk about that makes me the writer that I am. I will talk about it maybe in March, but I can't decide if I want to do it March of 2026 or March of 2027, because there was a show I wanted to cover since it's going to be that time with Daria. Yeah, I want to talk about Daria sometime, but I'm not so sure if I want to do that anytime soon, around 2026 or 2027. Seriously, why do I have to be almost the same close year of these years? However, it's almost time for Halloween, so I figured I might as well talk about another Dark Magical Girl show. You know, I should really do Dark Magical Girl show was around October, wouldn't you think? No? Well, I'll have to see how the time goes. But anyways, what series I talked about anyways was the series Magical Girl Raising Project. I already made it clear that this year's series had so much to go for. I mean, think about it. An RPG mobile game and you get to try and survive in here. Sounds good on paper, but the execution was just botched down. Not as horrible as, say, Magical Girl Site was, but it was still pretty botched in its own execution. To the point where they obviously decided to kill off characters for the sake of killing off characters, and they don't even give you more room to breathe with those characters being developed. I'm all for having a big cast and everything, but like I stated in that video, I think it could have benefited for 24 episodes. And don't tell me you couldn't do anything with 24 episodes. I really feel like Kill la Kill did that pretty well for itself. Or was it 25? I can't quite remember, but I do know it was in the 20s range. But even and with that said, I still feel pretty bad. They really went too far out of their way just to make whatever they could out of that. As for the final video I did it around, say, before Halloween became about, and that was the series Hell Girl. As I said it before, I haven't seen the rest of the series up to now, and I still have yet to catch up, but from what I've heard, I did hear some people say it stays the same while still having a little more touches to it, but I wouldn't know because I've only seen season 1 and a little bit of season 2, so I can't really say that much. As for the video itself, however, I think it's one of those videos where I felt like it was a bit rushed. Keep in mind, in October, I didn't expect myself to have a lot of videos, and what's more, it was close to Halloween when I was getting that video done, so I can't really say that was all disappointing, but I still felt like it could have been better. Hell. But we're finally getting close to the end of the year, so let's talk about November and see what happened in there. Chapter 11, November. I do apologize if I hurt people if they're born in November when I say this, but let me just say for the record, I've never been a huge fan of November, ever since I turned 16 due to a death of my father. But I'll get to that in a bit, but right here is where I have to say we finally get to talk about my favorite live stream that I've done so far on my channel this year. In this case, I'm talking about the Star Giant discussions, or I should say party time with Flamingo Writer, but whatever you call it, I still love this stream. And I'm being dead serious when I say that, because out of all the live streams I could think of, this one was actually the most fun, because not only did it have a lot of my friends gather around, especially we were roasting the hell out of Star Giant, but it's also to how much this would have happened if Star Giant wouldn't have went and doing some dumb shit behind the scenes. A little backstory why I did that. So you might be asking yourself, why? Why did I do Star Giant videos, if anything, to judge by? After all, they're not really the videos that really have that much to say other than what everyone else has said. But why you, Flamingo Writer? It's not like you're a victim of Star Giant. Well, here's the real reason why I did the Star Giant video, so buckle up in this roller coaster, because this does go someplace. See, the reason why I did the Star Giant live stream is not because originally I was going to just do a game and that's about it. It's mostly because I wanted to give my thoughts on Star Giant as a whole in the live stream and see where it took me from there. And what's more, behind the scenes, I was watching videos about the latest updates on Star Giant, from people like Mr. Enter to the Real Thomas, and you guessed it, Maddie Abraham. It's really sad when you realize that despite what some people might tell you, it's pretty sad that a lot of these here people had to go through the hell just to make those videos. And what's more, it's really sad when you realize that these victims are still suffering. I'm not a victim of Star Giant, but I am a victim of their white knights. I swear to God, that must be what some people will think of Star Giant anyways. They didn't do anything wrong. By the logic of reality, I did nothing wrong. Or, oh, you guys are an abuser. Oh, fucking cry me a river. I'm sorry, but if you're gonna say that I'm an abuser as well, let me tell you something, Star Giant. I've been called a lot worse than that, so shut the fuck up. And it doesn't make it even better, because even after that roasting session, it became more and more for people coming in just to see that. And I thought the Zay Magenta would come in views, even though that's still more popular on my channel. But even with that said, it was still fucking funny how we still love roasting that Star Giant. Seriously, if you still stand by Star Giant's actions, I really don't know if I should feel pity for you, or you guys should really be called the same phrase as that Tim Allen said when he played Buzz Lightyear. You are a sad, strange little man, and you have my pity. Farewell. And honestly, that's really the best way to describe Star Giant. Like, seriously, they'll do anything to make themselves look like the good guy when they're never gonna get that sympathy. Not from me, not from Lazy, not from anybody, and especially not the victims. Seriously, they've been through enough hell already. But after all of that, I did do another video, but, well, you remember when I said a minute ago that I was gonna talk about my dad? This is I kind of knew that this video was going to be pointless by the end of the day, but even with that said, however, I want to do a dedication about my dad, considering that, well, he meant a lot to me, and he motivated me to become the writer that I am. And for my love of flamingos, if anything, yeah, one thing's for sure, my dad was basically my hero and motivational speaker by the end of the day. But even if he's not here anymore for over 10 years at this point, I still think about him no matter what. And when you think about it like that, I still think about him and think, wow, it's been that long already. And I still think about him whenever I listen to Spanish songs or think about his cooking or whatever. It's really sad when you realize that's really the most I can say from that. And let's talk about the other live. The live stream in question was basically about how my friends were really just going so far as to hijack my stream again, but this time it was about gaming with a Mario Party game of Jamboree. You know, it's really sad I don't have a Switch. Otherwise, I would play with them. And in case you're wondering, yeah, I would play Yoshi. He's my favorite Mario character, and you can't stop me. That being said, however, it was pretty fun to see it, but even I'll admit I had to duck out every now and then, and I was coughing really rapidly because I didn't know what I was choking for my drink or something, but I did make jokes sometimes, and I think it's pretty funny, regardless of what you may think. Though I find it funny how they always play their characters and try to be all party crashers. Hey, maybe we call ourselves party smashers. That wouldn't sound right, would it? But nonetheless, I'm glad they had fun gaming on my channel, even if we did have a bit of a hard time in the beginning. But hey, we still had a lot to say nonetheless. Didn't. And finally, the video that I did that took me a long time to watch in November, though I finally got it done, was the series Tokyo Mew Mew. As I said in the Magical Girl podcast video, it did take me a long time to watch this, and even if I didn't grow up with it, I still have heard about it. But even with that said, I still enjoy Tokyo Mew Mew. At least until I started skipping a few parts that I really felt like I should have put in there. For example, I didn't mention that Mint, one of the characters in that series, calls Sakura, a character who goes by the wolf, always calls her his sister or big sister. Like, to the point where she really finds her a big sister-like figure. Or speaking of Sakura, I didn't get to mention that Sakura was also a superstar or a singer in her own right. Even with that said, however, this video did quite alright for all it counts, and I do respect it for that. Even with that said, however, I did feel like I felt bad for only watching a few episodes per time, but there was a reason for that. Like I said in January, I had a few night shifts, and what's more, I had a few night shifts at this rate as well. Well, I do apologize for that for taking so long, but hey, at least I finally got Tokyo Mew Mew on the list, but we're still not done. We're finally almost at the home stretch of December, and let's see what I have to say about it. Chapter 12, December. And now we're finally here in December. Well, I will say December itself is not over yet, but even with that said, I decided to talk about why I've been doing these videos, but let's talk about the Saint Tail video for just a quick. Believe it or not, I did have a hard time watching this year's series because I did start it around after Thanksgiving, but I wanted to try and watch every few episodes, like say every day, so I can at least try to see what I can get out of. And for the time being, I think I have to say what I have to say about Saint Tail itself. It's pretty underrated, and it did give me a bit of a decent note to leave out on the Magical Girl podcast, which It wasn't as much as last year, considering I only had 15 last year, but I did 13 this year, and hopefully we'll see how many I get this year done. But as for Saint Tail itself, however, while the video itself is pretty lengthy, even though it's not as long as, say, the video you're watching right now, I still managed to talk about it in that regard. But even with that said, I still enjoyed Saint Tail, and hopefully with the Metro Girl shows I do talk about will be other overlooked gems, if anything. We'll just have to see when the time. But you know, there is one question that I'm sure a lot of you guys are probably wondering. Why? Why did I do a video like this after all? After all, it's not supposed to be some sort of internet finale or anything like that. And what's more, I'm just trying to get my things out there while I still can. So why did I do a channel recap to begin with? Well, here's the thing. By the time this video comes out, I really feel like this is one of those cases where, unlike the last time I did a channel update, this one feels like it's more on the say it's less complicated, and what's more, you can pretty much watch whatever month you feel like was best for you. And even with that said, however, I gotta admit, it did give me a lot to say, more than I've realized, and I do commend it for that. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that before we close things off, there is one thing I need to say, so I guess let's go into the conclusion of this video. Conclusion. Now that we're here at the end of the video, I think it's only fitting to say that this video took me a while to make. And I realize that's really not saying a lot, considering that other videos of mine have taken a lot longer. But even with that said, however, I'm not so sure what to say about that regardless of that. But let's get this out of the way. By the time of writing this video, I'm not so sure if I'm going to be doing a live stream around after Christmas or whatnot. But believe me, I originally wanted to talk about a bad Christmas movie. But again, I don't want anyone to think that I want to just spread the word and say, oh, let's watch a this bad video on Christmas while you guys can never see your family. I'm not that kind of person. I want you guys to hang out with your family. That's more important than my videos, I'll say. But even beyond that, I really can't stress enough how much this channel has come so far. Let me put it to you like this. When I started my channel in April of 2023, I wasn't expecting myself to do anything except those YouTube shorts. And honestly, that's really something at least. But it didn't really give me that much anyways, considering that I was still trying to find my footing. And what's more, I wasn't expecting myself to be a YouTuber. That is until January of 2024. If you guys remember from almost 2 years ago, Jesus Christ. But yeah, if you guys remember from January of 2024, I did videos on Madeline Hatter, a groomer who was supposedly a friend of mine, but honestly, after seeing what she did to backstab me and other people behind her back, it goes without saying that I don't support her anymore after that. I only called out on her bullshit because I couldn't stand seeing kids get hurt, and I wanted to get the word out as much as I can. Let me put it to you as much as I can. When it comes right down to it, I'm not some internet celebrity. I'm not some big user. I'm not some Wonder Woman. Hell, I'm not even Sailor Moon, if that's any regard. I'm just a random woman who's being a person who's just trying to get out there and doing whatever I can. But unlike 2024, where I felt like it was a roller coaster, where I felt like I was still starting out to find my footing, this year was a lot more different than I've realized. And for things that could be better and things were worse, I guess you could say. Yeah, this is one case where I'm not going to mince words with you. I wouldn't say that 2025 was a bad year for me personally, but to make matters a little more better for you guys to understand, I'm not saying that interesting means good. In my view, when I say interesting, I just say it's okay, somewhere in the middle. That being said, however, I did get to do a lot of stuff, but jeez Louise, I don't know if it's just me personally, but 2025 really went fast, didn't it? I started supporting other YouTubers while I was still on my own channel doing my own thing, and even with that said, I still have friends join my channel, which is more than enough to say thank you, if anything to judge by. I couldn't thank you guys enough for making this channel go as far as it did. Now, with that said, I'm not too sure what to expect from 2026 and onward. I mean, seriously, it's bad enough that the AJID thing is still going around because, oh, we can't have kids on this platform. We want them to be safe. Even though, like a million other people have said before me, this isn't really about you guys protecting the kids. You're just controlling these kids like some kind of fucking puppet master. But even with that said, that does lead us to one question. what's next for Flamingo Writer? Like, what am I gonna do next? Well, as of the time of writing this video, I'm still gonna keep my Magical Girl podcast. I'm still gonna keep my chillaxing streams if anyone wants to join me. And even with that said, I'm not so sure what to expect. Maybe I'll do lists every now and then, which I really want to do, considering I am inspired by a lot of people who have done lists. But even beyond that, it goes without saying that this video hopefully is not as long as, say, the other videos I've done, like the Jose list. But even beyond that, I really feel like this is one of those cases where I really have done a lot more than I've realized. Not as much as last year, but still in all. This video is not really anything special. I'm not expecting anyone to say, oh, grab your popcorn and sit back and watch the movie or anything. It's just me just rambling a bunch of stuff that happened on my channel. For better things and for things that I wish could go away around the time. And if you know what I mean, then you know what I mean. I'm not expecting everyone to like me, but at the very least, you can at least respect my boundaries and stuff like that. I guess what I'm trying to say is that I'm not expecting myself to get out there. I'm not expecting everyone to like me or anything. I'm just a decent way of saying that I'm not that special. I'm not even anything awesome. I'm just me, and that's it. I'm not having anyone become parasocial towards me, which honestly, due to the fact how many people ping me this year, that's more than I could ever ask for. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that it goes without saying that you guys really mean a lot to me, and I couldn't have a better audience than I could have. So, final thoughts? This video may have been a long time to make, but regardless, I'm glad that a lot of you guys have stuck around me throughout this entire time anyways. Now, like I said, I'm not so sure if I'm going to be doing a live stream and answering anyone's questions, because someone behind the scenes, one of my friends, did ask if I could do a live stream during the time, but like I said, I'm not so sure what to expect from that. What I can tell you is that 2026 and onward, I don't know what to say about my channel. I will say that it will be something, I just don't know what it'll be like that. It's just something that I do because, well, videos really occupy me, and since I was inspired by people that I looked up to, I figured I might as well do my own content. I'm not going to say my content's anything special. That's not what my channel aims to do, but I will say that my content is here for those who want to see it, and I do commend everybody for sticking with me. My audience, my friends, everybody who's been with me for the past years, everybody like that. Though, admittedly, I know I have some detractors out there. This Flamingo is taking care of her family. No, I'm not over that shit anytime sooner. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that I really don't know what else to say beyond, hopefully the future will be better than yesterday. I don't know. I'm not going to be like Star Giant or anything. I'm not going to be some big known user or anything like that, but I am saying this from people who have been with me for the past couple of years for so far. And with that, I think that's all I need to say with the matter. I'm not really someone special. I'm just here doing videos and whatnot. You guys are free to enjoy my other videos, but please, for the life of me, watch my other videos. Please watch my Magical Girl videos or my live streams. They're a lot more entertaining than, say, the videos I've done with my take-ons that I've done last year. But I know some people aren't going to do that, apparently, so you take what it is. So I guess you can say that you can leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and you can tell me how you feel about 2025. I'll just leave that in the comment down below and pin it. But with that said, I thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you all next time, and hopefully, and I do mean hopefully, 2026, if I'm not back for a live stream after Christmas, maybe I'll see what I can do with that. But for the time's sake, that's really all I have to say. So, yeah. I hope you guys have a happy holidays as well. So, happy holidays, and again, stay Flamingo-tastic, everybody. I'll see you all around.